and we'll get into it. So today's training is basically about troubleshooting CCS and session reports. Last week we focused on the account side of things. So now let's focus on actual submissions of CCS, and we're going to focus on anything to do with enrollments, entitlements, and that kind of thing, as well as when we're actually submitting our sessions and what can go wrong and different ways to help you troubleshoot them. Okay. So yeah, awesome. So basically, from like a agenda point of view, things that we're going to try and cover in this training, and some of it might be information you already know, and some of it might be new. So I've just tried to condense it all to sort of things that can affect on a troubleshooting level, can affect CCS and enrollments going through and whatnot. Okay. Firstly, we're going to talk about the enrollments, the different types of arrangements, and even the types of enrollments, how to create them, update them, cease them, etc. We'll talk about the statuses that an enrollment can go into, whether it's pending confirmation, eligibility, confirmed, and the rest of it. We're also going to check once you've actually come across into owner, you might have a different software you're using in the past. So we can actually check I want to show you how you can check any child at any given stage that doesn't have an enrollment ID, and then using these steps in this guide, how you can actually create an enrollment ID for them. Okay. We're also going to look at while we're actually trying to create this enrollment ID, things that may, stop the submission going through in different types of errors. Now, there are multiple errors, but I've just focused on the main ones for today. And I will point you around tutorial guides in a tutorial guides in a second on where you guys can see these errors and sort of help dissect them as well. We're going to look at the statuses, basically like when you're looking at your enrollment statuses, how to look at all your children and how to also just see that one specific child from a quick link on their profile. We're going to look at entitlements in the second half. So that's basically more if we're splitting it up, that's the first half. And the second half, we're looking at entitlements and how percentages and hours can affect them, the daily cap rates and whatnot, and also annual cap rates, and also seeing where you can see changes and all that sort of stuff, as well as we'll get into sessions. So submitting our sessions, the different types of submissions you can do, whether you can submit it, update it, and also withdraw the sessions, how to actually see our submitted sessions, and how to also see all our children in the center, who has gone through and has not, as well as, again, errors while trying to do that process. And then using these two sort of knowledge bases together, we'll look at children that have two carers and they need different enrollment IDs and the flow and effect, as well as if we realize that there's incorrect data for a particular child, what the CCS implication is and how we can fix that all up. Okay, so they're the kind of things that we're going to go through. Awesome. So let's get into it. So this training is going to be based on the assumption that we already know a bit about how the CCS works. We have other trainings and other tutorials on the ins and outs of it. Okay, so I'm not going to get too focused on how to get to certain places because I believe majority of people watching this should already know. Okay, we're going to talk about the actual troubleshooting today. So, oh no. Give me a sec, guys. Just give me one moment. I'm just going to pause the video really quickly. Everyone, I do apologize. I'm back. Yeah, there was just a configuration setting on our end. Oh, how funny. That wasn't turned on to show the CCS tab because obviously we're going to need it a lot for today. Awesome. Please disregard everything that just happened and we'll, resume as planned. Okay, we're back in. So let's start. So basically what we're going to talk about is the arrangement types. Now, when you're creating the CCS enrollment for a child, you need to select the relevant arrangement type. Now, majority of the times you're going to select one of these two, CWA or RA, this one. Sometimes if it's with an organization, you'll choose an OA, and then very rarely you use the ACCS, okay? I'll explain why about the ACCS in a second as well. So complying written agreement is the most common, which means, and that's where you have your parents, fill out your CWA forms and whatnot. And it basically just means that the child is entitled to CCS and they will be claiming, okay? If you have a situation where the family is not entitled to CCS, we recommend, and the department also recommends, to still submit your children, but just submit them as a relevant arrangement, okay? And the difference is basically under a CWA, the child will be able to receive CCS payments, whereas under an RA, they will not, okay? However, you will still be able to create an enrollment ID either under either category. And what that means is every single week when you submit your sessions, those children will be submitted to the government. Now, the reason it's important for an RA is because if the family situation changes at a later stage, if we're not creating enrollment IDs for children, they're not getting submitted. So when the situation changes and they go to Senate to try and claim, what will happen is it becomes a bit of like a troublesome issue because they haven't had any sessions prior to that. So there's no track record of their child's attendance, okay? This was very big when coronavirus started as well. A lot of parents were in that boat where they weren't claiming prior to coronavirus, and then a lot of people lost their jobs and they had to go in and claim for CCS, and it just became a little bit of a nightmare for some parents. So what they've recommended to us is always get your parents to create an enrollment ID, and whether it's a CWA claiming CCS or not claiming as an RA, okay? So when you're not claiming, you submit as an RA. The difference between the two is basically this is predominant on, like, in terms of submission, is needs like CRN numbers and date of birth and all that to match the system, whereas the RA, you don't need the CRNs. It doesn't even need to be confirmed by the parents. It would just go into the database as a received sort of enrollment, just to let the government know what's the attendance pattern, basically. All right. So they're different ones. And then obviously, if you have an arrangement with an organization, you use that in more rare cases. And the reason why I said don't use the ACCS is because we've spoken to the CCS department, and children that are on ACCS need to be submitted as a CWA, and then the ACCS be applied on top of that CWA, okay? Very few cases will you ever have a child be submitted straight as an ACCS child, because the criteria is, do they have a legal guardian or not? The legal guardian may be a carer, an auntie, even like a foster parent, right? However, they're all still considered legal guardians, and they will be created as a CWA, and then ACCS be applied on top. Whereas when you have a child that doesn't have one legal guardian in like a group home, for example, that's when you go through the ACCS channel. But you can't just even apply as an ACCS. You actually have to contact the CCS department and get permission first, okay? So if you have ACCS children, more likely than not, you're going to submit them as a CWA and apply the ACCS on top, okay? It's something that the government has told us recently that they are, it's something that the government's recently told us that they are looking into. They haven't been stringent on it up until now, but there is a point in time where they will actually knuckle down and make sure that everyone's doing it correctly. So if you do have any ACCS children, make sure you submit them as a CWA first and apply the ACCS on top, okay? Is the owner online enrollment form considered a CWA? No, Nick. The CWA is actually different. So the online enrollment form is basically to get their enrollment in, like for you to capture all their information so you can create their enrollment. However, a CWA form is done through the app, okay? Really quickly, so everyone knows, we have, and you probably have seen this many times, app cheat sheets for parents. See if it loads here on my simulator. It may or may not. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's just one of those things because it's a simulator. I'll try one more time, hope for the best. No, okay, so we do it the other way. Oops, my bad. Give me a sec. We do have guides on how people can do this, right? But essentially, okay, I'm using like the old setup. Your setup will look a little bit different, but it'll be very similar content. Basically, we have the app cheat sheet, which the parents can access from their phone, as you saw before, from their app. And one of the things that they can do is this here, sign, where'd it go? This one here, sign a CWA form, okay? And the steps are very simple for parents. They just go onto their app, which is this one, okay? As long as they've linked to their child correctly, you click on their child's name, click on the little ellipsis, and then sign CWA form, okay? And this will pull through the information on their profile in terms of their days, their session of care, their price, etc. And then the parent will be able to see all their rooms and all that sort of stuff and basically sign that off if they're happy with it, okay? So it is different to the online form. Good question though. I hope that makes sense as well, Nick. All right, so moving forward from there. Yeah, so basically they're your arrangement types, okay? Let me just double check the slides to see if I had anything else. Perfect. All right. So now the next step you're going to do is you've selected the correct CWA. Now, arrangement type, sorry. Now, obviously with an RA, it's very easy. You don't need to, RAs, you don't need to focus on any of these CRN numbers for children or carers, okay? So you pretty much just go through and submit it. I'll show you in a sec how. But when it comes to CWA, it is a little bit more particular, okay? So the CWA needs to match the information that's already in the CCS database. So what I mean by that is the CRN of the child as well as the child's date of birth need to match, right? And also the primary carer, so in this case, Todd Smith, when we click on their profile, and you can do it quickly by clicking this little quick link and opening it in a new tab like I did, you can actually check that they have a CRN and date of birth as well that matches the system. The reason I say it very clearly like that is because any of those will cause issues later, right? When we go through the troubleshooting steps. So essentially create the enrollment. There's a few different things you can do with enrollments. Number one, you can create them. Number two, you can update them. Number three, you can cease them. And number four, you can reactivate them, okay? So I can show you all those steps now, but do note that we do have a guide on all of those as well. So our tutorial format has changed a bit, but I'm using the old software here on the demo site. So it looks a little bit different, but essentially under children, what would yours be called? I think yours is called CCS usage, I believe, or could be under the children tab. Sorry, I've forgotten exactly what the layout is. You will have sections where you can submit enrollments, you can update enrollments, you can reactivate them and cease them as well somewhere here. There, okay? So you can do all of that there. Do all parents have to sign the CWA form? And if so, how often should they be signing the CWA form? Hey, Brenda, if you're following the rules and regulations based off the CCS department, every time there's a change, they need to complete a new CWA form, okay? And now when you say all parents, yes, but if you're using CWA forms from previous softwares and you don't want to create a new one for all your parents in owner, you can attach them as documents to the children's profiles, or what some services decide to do is just get all their parents to sign a new CWA form to make sure it's all up to scratch, okay? Owner actually records all CWA forms as well. So you saw before how the parent signs it, and after the parent signed it, you can come under your CCS tab CWA, and then you'll be able to see every child that has not completed, so current children without CWAs. So the number of children that have not completed a CWA form, and you can see exactly which ones they are, okay? So if you're gonna use the CWA off the app as your main way of doing it, we show you exactly who has or has not done it here, okay? Keep in mind, parents can, like we said before, re-sign the CWA forms at any time, okay? This is just mainly focusing on making sure that there's at least one entry for that child. Awesome. Great questions. Does anyone else have questions about CWAs? Happy to go through it. Sorry guys, I'm just going to mute whoever that was. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, awesome. So that answers that question. Now, what I want to show you is
I've written out what I want us to focus on.
Sorry, can you guys someone just keeps unmuting their mic? Can you just make sure that you've left it mute, please? Thank you. By the way, for anyone that wants to speak, just use the chat box. And the reason we do that is just because of the background noise and because we're recording. Okay. So just use the chat box, ask your questions as people have done so far. Okay, let me just quickly.
Pastel, like the crayons with watercolors, and weeks 6 to 8 or 6 to 10 was
All right, there we go. All right, sorry about that. Now, when a child has an enrollment, okay. So in Sunnyside, we have demo data, so sometimes it's hard to find exactly what we want. Why is this missing? That's all right. Let me just try something. Perfect. Now, I'm just trying to show you the difference between a create new enrollment. Maybe I'll just open up 2 different children. Maybe this will work. Nope. Sorry, our data just gets played around with for centers to like have a play basically. So we don't always, our data doesn't always work the way we want it to, but yours will be fine. So moving on from there. So we're going to create the enrollment. Now we use this section on the child's profile called submit/update enrollment to CCS. The way you submit a session, an enrollment, is very easy. You just select the effective from date. Now CCS have made it very clear we can only select a date which is today or in the past, okay, to create an enrollment. So today is the 6th or something like that, the 6th of May. So I will only be able to choose this date or anything prior to that as my effective from date. Even if the child's starting, let's say, for example, in 2 weeks' time on the 17th, you just start the enrollment from the 6th. That's not a problem at all, okay? You create their enrollment. And the thing to remember is because we won't be submitting sessions between the 6th and whatever date they're starting, it won't affect their CCS. So it's not like they're going to get CCS from the 6th onwards. They will only get CCS based off the sessions that they submit. So we can start it. That's why they allow us to start it early, but we have to choose a date, which is within their criteria. So basically you choose that as your effective from date and you create the new enrollment to CCS here. Now, once you've done that, assuming you get a confirmation, everything's successful, you get a confirmation message at the top saying your enrollment has been submitted successfully. And what will happen is when you reload that child's page, you'll be able to see an enrollment ID has filtered through here, okay, and automatically generated on that child's profile. And then basically that will start the process on what happens next, which we'll get to in a second. Okay, so that's creating an enrollment. Now, once an enrollment has already been created, if you need to make an update, so basically one thing to note as well when you're creating or updating enrollments, it filters through by what's on the child's profile. Okay, so you want to make sure that the rooms, days, session of cares, fees, and all that have been updated accordingly, or even when you're even creating it, I guess, entered correctly, so that when you're creating that enrollment or updating it, it's using that information to filter through, okay? Now, let's say, for example, something's changed. As you said before, a new CWA has to be filled. The enrollment needs to be updated. They went from 2 days to 3 days, or their fees changed, or whatever the case may be. You can easily update the enrollment as well by selecting the effective from date of the enrollment, okay? And then just updating it. Now, the easiest way to find the effective from date of that enrollment, if you don't already have a track record, is by looking in the database itself. And then we have access to the database, which we will talk about in this tutorial a little bit more as well, under CCS enrollment details, okay? But you can also see that individual child's status by clicking this quick link at the top, CCS enrollment status. This basically just takes you to the database and it just filters it by that one child only, okay? You'll be able to find the start date of that enrollment here. So underneath in this section here, you'll be able to see an enrollment. You'll be able to see the start date. And basically you use that start date to update the enrollment, okay? Because basically what you're doing is you're saying this enrollment which started on this day now has an update, and you click the update button, all right? That updates the enrollment. And if it's already confirmed on MyGov, the parent won't need to reconfirm it, but they will be able to see the changes on their end, okay? That's how you would update it. To CSET, it's similar, but similar sort of process where you put the start date here because we're ceasing the enrollment which started on this particular date. So once again, you find the date from the CCS enrollments status quick link, you put it here, and then one extra step, you cease the enrollment, okay? So you put the date that they're gonna cease. Now, you can choose a a date in the past if you've forgotten to cease them or didn't get a chance to or whatever, and you can cease them prior. Or you can also choose a date in the future. So a lot of times you get 2 weeks notice and you know ahead of time when they're going to cease. So you can choose that date ahead of time, okay? And that will cease them at that particular point in time. What will happen is once you cease them and you get the confirmation message, once you reload this CCS enrollment screen, so if you had it previously loaded, just reload it. What will happen is on the right-hand side here where it says status, it will still say confirmed, but right underneath it, it will say end, and it will show you the date that you selected the enrollment to stop, to cease, okay? So that will all be there. Now, obviously, when ceasing enrollments and even creating enrollments, you have to be wary of, all those rules around absences, prior to the cease date and absences prior to the first physical attendance, because that's obviously going to affect the CCS calculation. So just keep those in mind. Now, if you didn't cease your child, CCS will automatically cease them every 14 weeks, okay? Any child not submitted and in a confirmed status that hasn't been submitted for 14 weeks will be automatically ceased by the department, okay? However, the issue that causes is 14 weeks is almost 3 months and a bit. So if there was a discrepancy in the CCS payment, it makes it very hard to chase the parents up to tell them that they lost some CCS and they need to pay it up, okay? So we always recommend ceasing your children as you know their end dates, okay? Awesome. And the last thing you can do is actually reactivate a ceased enrollment. So you might have a child which leaves your service in February but comes back in July, okay? So all that data in owner, first of all, would just be archived, so you can bring it back by reactivating the child, as well as on the CCS from an enrollment point of view, you can reactivate the child as well. All you need to do to reactivate a child is make sure that the enrollment ID is still in their profile. If it's not, just go into the database, which I'll show you in a second as well, how to do from the CCS enrollment details section. But if you go from the child's profile, as long as their CRN is there, it still should find their previous enrollments. You can copy their enrollment ID and put it back on their profile, okay? Now, as long as that enrollment ID is there, you'll be able to reactivate them. So whatever date they're starting up again, past or today's date for the effective from, and then where it says here, reactivating a ceased enrollment, you put yes, okay? Anytime you're doing an enrollment, if the child's in state care, make sure you select that box as well. Good question. So someone's asking about what about children that are doing vacation care periods? It just depends. If it's more than 14 weeks, they will just automatically be ceased. So if you, both ways work, okay? There's no right or wrong per se, because you can cease them, for example, in February and then reactivate them in June, like I was just talking about now. But then you'll have to do it for every child, or you can leave it. But the thing is, if it's more than 14 weeks, they will be automatically ceased anyway. So it might just be a thing where you'll just need to keep that as part of the process, okay? But if you think I don't think there's a right or wrong, just check the regulations and see what they say as well. I think if you want to be 100% accurate, I would cease them and then reactivate them. But then obviously that's more work. So I think, yeah, better to say, check the regulations to see if there's a ruling around that. But I think from a flow point of view, they both work the same. One just would require you to reactivate all your children. However, if it's more than 14 weeks, they're going to be ceased anyway. So that might just be something you need to do, okay? Prior to the new vacation care period opening up. Awesome, good question. So yeah, let me just check. Yeah, we talked about all those, right? So they're basically the 4 different things you can do with enrollments, okay? Like I said, we have guides on them. Now, when you actually submit your enrollment, there's when you submit your enrollment, there's 2 different statuses that the enrollment can go into. One will be pending confirmation and the other will be pending eligibility, okay? And you can clearly see those again via the CCS enrollment status link, and then clicking through, and then you'll be able to see the status right here where it says status, okay? Now, the difference between them is pending confirmation means that the parent has done everything correctly from a Centrelink and CCS point of view. So all they need to do is go to MyGov and confirm the enrollment. Whereas pending eligibility means that for whatever reason, that carer/guardian is not yet eligible. So they need to actually contact Centrelink to find out what further steps they need to take to become eligible. They might need to upload immunizations. They might need to do activity tests, whatever the case may be. Awesome. So essentially, once we've created enrollments, they're the two statuses they can go to. However, during the life of an enrollment, the status can change, and I did talk about that in a different training as well. And no, this one. And basically, what can happen? Different statuses, I guess, that an enrollment can be in other than confirmed, obviously, is received. So received will be based on your RA type arrangements that we talked about earlier, as well as in the past when you did CWAs, if you had missing information and CRN numbers and whatnot, they went as a received in as well, right? So that's when you'll see a received status. Disputed is the fun one. So disputed basically means that the parent has gone onto MyGov and clicked the dispute button because they didn't like some information which was portrayed to them. Now, that's why it's so important to get your enrollments when you submit your enrollment for the first time to get it correct, as well as updating that enrollment. Someone was asking earlier about CWAs. The CWA needs to be updated, but as well as the enrollment, because the parent can always dispute it. And when they dispute an enrollment, it pretty much just puts a halt on their CCS. So that affects things down the line as well. So they won't get CCS until that's fixed up. And if you do have it disputed, all you need to do is just update it like I showed you before. Make sure the information that the parent's disputing, whether it's number of days, fees, sessions, whatever the case may be, make sure that's all updated on the child's profile and then resubmit it, okay? Just update it basically and it'll go through and then the parent can just confirm it again, okay? And then obviously cease, which you talked about before. And then basically, depending on the status that the enrollment is in, will determine whether CCS can come through or not, okay? Now, one thing to note is like, especially when you're starting up and you've just pulled through all your information, whether you entered it manually or you've actually come through like a extraction guide that we send or uploaded a data upload sheet. What will happen is you'll be able to quickly come here to CCS, weekly attendance fee, and see which children still have or do not have any enrollment IDs. Now you can run the enrollment IDs with so children without enrollment IDs as a report by itself, and it will only focus on children without enrollment IDs. Or you can run all your children and see ones with enrollment IDs in brackets and ones without enrollment IDs in other brackets. Okay, so you can see all of that as well. If I have 2 seconds, I might be able to show you a quick photo. I'll try this. If it doesn't work within the next 20 seconds, then I'll skip. I think it's here. Let me just see. Yeah, perfect. So oh yeah, it went all the way to the top. I couldn't find it. Basically, you'll be able to see children with no enrollment IDs, and they'll be clearly displayed like this. Okay, and then so this is a view of all my children, and any child you can kind of see here will have their enrollment ID in a bracket. Okay, so you can run that report and check. Okay, now the other thing you do, especially when transitioning, is actually get all your enrollment IDs from the database itself, and we have a guide on how to do that. Basically, you go to the enrollment details, click a button, and it all comes through. Okay, and you'll be able to run this report with children without enrollment IDs to find out who still doesn't have an enrollment ID. There might be some cross-referencing you need to do. Check your children in owner, check your children in the database to make sure, for example, Jack Simmons, that was one child which even after he pressed the button didn't come through. So you can check the database to see if Jack Simmons does have an enrollment. And then if they do, you can copy and paste it on their profile as well. Okay. If you're looking at this at a later stage, where like after the initial transfer, children without enrollment IDs generally mean that you haven't created one for them. So just go through the steps and create one. Okay. And then basically that will allow you to submit the sessions. One thing to note is once the enrollment ID has been created, you can submit the sessions for them. And depending on how fast that becomes confirmed, will determine on when the CCS will be paid and backdated. Okay. However, even if it's still not confirmed just yet, you can still submit the sessions in the meantime. Awesome. So yeah, that's basically one way to do it. You can also check the view or children screen, by the way, I forgot to mention. That will also show you children that don't have enrollment IDs. it's probably clearer to see it on the weekly attendance fee screen. Now, on this note, let's talk about errors. So we actually have a guide. Now, your layout's going to be different to this. I wish I can get the other layout. I'm going to try something quickly. It may or may not work. I want to see if I can get the layout that you guys see, because we just recently updated our tutorial guides, and I want to see if I can show you the layout that you guys will be seeing. Here we go. Fingers crossed. Yeah, perfect. All right, so this is the new layout for our tutorials. We're getting so many tutorials basically, so we decided to categorize them. Now, what you'll be able to see is, if I get back to my slides. Oh yeah, errors. So you'll be able to see a section here which has errors. So under CCS usage on the right here, you'll be able to see at the bottom of all these guides. So this is where you'll find all your submission of CCS, your updating, your ceasing and whatnot. You'll actually also see some troubleshooting steps, I guess, one with enrollments and one with submissions. So when it comes to enrollments, there are different sort of error codes you might get. Okay, so let's just go through them. One thing that might happen is you might get this code here, right? Now, when you see an error code, try and ignore all these like numbers and stuff that don't make any sense and just look at what's in the brackets. That's what I usually do. All the words that kind of make sense. See, this is like very codey basically, so you might not know what any of this means, but here it says start time, end time must not overlap. So it makes clear sense what it is. So in the first case here, you'll see that max length equals 10. Okay, so what that means is the enrollment ID that not enrollment ID, sorry, the CRN that was provided either on the child level or on the carer level actually exceeds 10 characters. So the CRNs must not have any spaces, as well as make sure there's no extra characters accidentally typed in. Okay, so if you see that error message, that's what it means. Okay, and we've clearly showed it here. CRN has spaces in it or it exceeds 10 characters. Okay, another thing we see a lot is this error message that says please enter mandatory field standard amount. Okay, now when you open that up, it basically means that the child doesn't have a fee which is displaying on their profile. Okay, so when you go to, something's wrong. All right, there we go. When you go to your children, I'll show you now. When you look at their room and current days enrolled, if this is blank, okay, you will get that problem, because remember how I was saying that the enrollment focuses on the information on the child's profile. There is a stop, I guess, that if there's a child with no fee, it will bring up an error code. Okay, so just add in a fee. Make sure you always add session cares as well. It's good to get in that habit. If you have sessions, add them all in there and then update it. Basically, you have two different error messages. One can be on an individual level, so the carer, or one can be on the child level. And essentially, the CRN and date of birth do not match what's in the CCS database. We have this sometimes where it's like a missed typo. You write 04, but it's actually 14. Or it might be that the actual information in the database is different to what the parent's giving you. So if you ever have these issues, the best way to go about it is basically ask the parent to take a screenshot of what's in their MyGov, because what's in their MyGov is what's on the database. That's all we need to make sure we match. Okay, this does happen a lot, and the most clear distinction, I guess, to make here is individual is carer, child is child. Okay, so you know exactly where to focus. And as we saw before, you can easily see the carer's information from the quick link at the top. Make it really easy to get onto their profile and dissect that. Okay, back then with like the 10 characters, you can easily see that they have, you know, sort of like a what do you call it, CRN that has like this kind of stuff. You can easily go in and fix it. Okay, so you'll be able to change all that up and easily navigate between child and parent, or more accurately, carer / guardian. Awesome. I feel like I've lost my slides. Oh no, they were here. Oh yeah, sometimes you'll get a duplicate enrollment. Okay, so oh no, I missed this one. So start time, end time. So this is more for centers that are doing like before and after school care. So what will happen is you'll be able to you'll see an error message that looks like this, where it says start time, end time must not overlap with other sessions on the same day. Okay, so now when you've got the child and they have sessions, right? Their first session cannot overlap with their second session. So if you have something like this and then like that, or they're the same, but even like that, for example, or whatever the case may be, there's an overlap there. Okay, one starts, or let's say it was opposite way, 6:30 to 8:45. Okay, and then you also did 6:30 to 16. See how there's an overlap between the end time of this one session and the beginning time of this? That's what will cause that issue. Okay, so make sure your session of cares are entered in correctly. Okay, awesome. And yeah, we talked about it briefly before, but basically with duplicate enrollments. So with duplicate enrollments, when you have a child which is ceased and then you try to create an enrollment for them, because the database, because the submission is looking through the database for the CRN number, if it finds that it previously had an enrollment, you would need to use the old enrollment and reactivate it. Okay, so you might see like a duplicate enrollment type error. Okay. Now we talked about briefly as well about the enrollment statuses. Really quickly, if you want to see all your children's enrollment statuses, just go to CCS and then go to enrollment details. Change the filter to all if you want to see all statuses, or leave it as confirmed if you just want to see the confirmed ones. Run that report, and it will show you all your children's enrollments here, and the latest ones you've updated or have had updates to them will be at the top, and then so forth and so on. Right? You'll see ceased, pending confirmations, pending eligibilities, and the rest of it. Okay. And then if you want to just go from that one individual child and you're focusing on just that child, sorry, from their child's profile, every child will have a quick link where you click that, and it basically takes you to the same exact place, but this one has no filters on it, whereas this one will automatically be filtering by CRN and or enrollment ID. Okay. So that will be easy to see there. Awesome. Does anyone have any questions on that? Enrollments and submissions and errors and whatnot? Put them in the chat box if you do. I'm just going to keep moving on to make sure we're okay for time. The next thing I want to talk about is entitlements. I did talk about it last week as well, but really quickly. So entitlements change, right? We have a way we track them in owner under the CCS tab entitlements, where you can see all your latest changes. You can see if percentages went up or down, and basically the table will display the child, all their previous entitlements, and then on the right, all their new entitlements. And if their hours went up, they'll be green and up arrows. And if the entitlements went down, there'll be red and down arrows. Okay. And on the right, you'll be able to see when the change happened. So you'll be able to see all that information. Now, the other thing to note as well is the caps on entitlements, the 1220 cap especially, and the 1067. So looking at the slides, if a child's non-school age, they have a daily cap rate of $12.20, which means you take the total fee for the center. Let's say in this particular case, the center charged $122 and the child was in for 10 hours that day. You would take 122 divided by 10 and you would get 12.2. So you'll be fine. If the center charged 130 hours for a 10-hour session, the child will be at $13 and only $12.20 will be covered and the rest will not be or be out of pocket. Okay. Really, really important to note that. And also really important to note that school age children have a $10.67 fee. Now, one thing to note about school age and non-school age is the parent actually dictates that on their MyGov when they create their children, when they submit their children's CCS for the first time. So I think they estimate the year that they believe their child will go to school. Now, things change down the track, and if that's not the case, the parent can always go in and update that, okay? But it bases it off that, whether they're non-school aged or school aged, what their cap will be, as well as one thing to note is the annual cap rate. There has been some talk in the news about removing the cap rate, but until that happens, we do have a cap rate. So certain families who earn a certain amount will only get a certain amount of CCS eligible to them. And once they reach that cap rate for that year, that financial year, they'll need to pay full fees. Okay. So that is something you need to keep on top of as well. Parents can see all that through their MyGov and they do get letters and stuff sent out as well. Okay. in owner or through the CCS database. We just note if yes, they have gone over it, or no, they haven't. Okay. Awesome. So let's talk about sessions, because that's a good one as well. So we do get a lot of troubleshooting sort of questions with enrollments, and we've gone through the most common ones, I guess. And now we'll go through sessions. Okay. Now, basically with sessions, you do them via the session reports tab. Let's get there. Let's just close some of this. Okay, so we can close this now, and soon we'll go through that. Okay, awesome. So real quick, backstory for anyone that may be newer, I guess, to this stuff. You can either set auto or manual. If you're manually submitting your sessions, what you're doing is you're putting in your week, selecting all your children, and then submitting them. Okay. Now, obviously, you've got warnings and stuff. We're not going through that stuff today, but that is there to help you with, before you submit. Now, when it comes to submission, you can do one of three things. You can submit a child, and that means any child which has not been previously submitted for that week will be so when a child has not been previously submitted for that week, whether it means there was an error on their submission the first time, or whether it just means this is the first time we're processing them, we always click the submit button. Okay. And that's what happens when you auto submit. On the back end, it's submitting all your children, right? If a child has been submitted, and I'll show you in a second how to see what's been submitted and whatnot, and the information that's been submitted is incorrect, or we're not happy with it, what we do is we actually come here, select that date, select that child, put in a reason if it's late, and then update that session. Okay. And what it does is it will replace the old one. When we run the report at the top, which I'll get to in a second, it will still show the old information, but it will show it as replaced. And it will also at the top show the new information. Okay. And then you use that basically when you still want to submit the child, but the information is incorrect. And then lastly, we can also withdraw sessions. Now, the best time to withdraw sessions is if for whatever reason we forgot to cease a child, or like we got to deactivate them in owner or whatever, and they actually submitted for a week, which they were not meant to submit at all. Okay. I'm not talking about they were absent. I'm just talking about they weren't meant to be submitted. Like they didn't have an enrollment in that period of time. Okay. But for whatever reason, a submission happened, we can actually withdraw it. Okay. And to withdraw a submitted session, you have to run the report at the top here to view the session. And on the right-hand side, far right, there'll be a red button saying withdraw. Okay. They're the three little buttons, I guess, you can press when it comes to sessions. Now, when you've actually submitted your sessions, there's two ways you can sort of, two different reports that you can run in owner to get a clear picture of that. Okay. Number one is the top one, which is under CCS Session Reports, where we're at right now, and view the submitted sessions. Okay. So you can actually run a report for that week. So let's say, for example, I submitted for last week, the 26th of April, all the way to the 2nd of May, Monday to Sunday, and then select either all children or a specific child, and you can run the session report. It will show you the exact information that was submitted, the child, the reporting period, what was submitted, any absences, any attendances, the sign-in, sign-out times, the session of care, the fees, all of that. Okay. You'll be able to see all that information under this section here. Oh, sorry, this will show you when it happened, like the submission, and when any updates happen, as well as this will show you the actual ins and outs of it day by day. And so what will happen is you can run this report at the top and it'll show you all that information. However, if there were children that were not submitted during that period because there was something wrong with their enrollment, there was some type of error stopping them from being submitted, and out of all my 9 children, only 7 were submitted. In this report here, I'll only see 7 children. I will not see the 2 that weren't submitted. Okay. So we always recommend after submitting sessions, you always run the following report under CCS weekly attendance fee, because this report will tell you exactly which children were submitted with a big green tick and which children were not submitted with a red X. Okay. So running that report for that particular week, so in this case, 26th of April, all children get attendance fee. I'll see all my children with ticks or crosses. If you have a very long list and you just want to see errors, you can select this checkbox here, CCS submission errors only, and then run that report, and you'll see all that information. Do I still have? Oh, I don't have it. Previously, I was showing you that picture from the weekly attendance fee screen. Essentially, any child, because it's incognito. Was I Safari before? No. I think something happened with my browsers before when I was playing around with them, so I can't find it. But basically, if you any child which hasn't been submitted will have a red X next to their name, and a blue arrow next to that. You can click the blue arrow and that will submit them. Now, if you want to see the error, like let's say, for example, there's an error that's happening behind the scenes, which we'll get to in a second, click that little blue arrow and it will populate on the right-hand side what the error is, okay? Now, when we come to troubleshooting CCS session submissions, there are different reasons. And so I'm trying to, I've selected a few here that are more common than not, but just keep in mind that there are different reasons as well. And basically, you would do what we did before. Skip all these error like numbers and whatnot, and just check the words that kind of make sense. Okay, so here, field is preschool program must not be populated. Okay, that's an error that comes up from time to time, which means someone selected that enrollment is a preschool enrollment. I might have skipped over that before. I'll show you now. When you're submitting the enrollment to CCS, if your child's in the kindergarten program, you tick this button, okay? Now, if this checkbox was ticked accidentally, you'll get that error message saying that that checkbox is ticked and it must be unchecked. Essentially, that's what it's saying, okay? So just go on the child's profile, untick the preschool program, and it should be fine, okay? Yeah, we've got start and end times must not overlap with other sessions on the same day. It's basically what we were talking about prior, prior to previously. Sorry, when we were submitting the session, the enrollments. Same thing, but before sessions, making sure that a session started in time for services that are doing like before and after school care, making sure there's no overlap or the child will not be submitted. Okay. Let me look at my notes as well to see what I've got. Preschool program, session of care. Okay, this is a good one. Session of care must fall in enrollment period. Okay, so you might see that. Bear with us because we're working on this error sort of section to make it to try and get as many as we can. But I think we're talking about this one here. Supplied session of care must fall within enrollment start. Yeah, this one here. So what you'll find is sometimes you'll have a child which starts their enrollment on a Wednesday, okay? But because we're trying to submit sessions, and when we submit sessions, it does it for the whole week, we might actually be trying to submit a session for Monday or Tuesday. Now, the system clashes because it's saying, hang on a second, the enrollment started on a Wednesday, but you're trying to submit the session for Monday, it's not going to go through, okay? So it clashes, it gives you this error, and you need to fix it. The fix is very easy. Just come back here to the enrollment, update the effective from to be the Monday instead of the Wednesday. So let's say it was 28th, and I'm trying to submit for this week, and I'm getting the error message. Just put it to the 26th, hit the update button, which you'll see, and then try and submit it that way, and it should go through, okay? Because essentially it was just outside of the enrollment period, okay? Yeah, this stuff is pretty self-explanatory when you sit down and think about it, but sometimes people just don't have the resources to understand it. That's why we go through these kind of trainings to sort of try and help. Not necessarily, Brenda. It just means that so the question was, if anyone doesn't see it, should we always be putting the enrollment start date in as Monday? I think personally I would, to be honest, because even if I did the enrollment start date as Monday and they started on Friday of that week, it still covers them, right? Personally, I think I would do that. However, even if you want to do the exact date that they start, just make sure that if you put the enrollment in on a Wednesday, but the parent call you up and ask, can we come one day early, that you're just on top of it, that you actually update the enrollment as well, okay? So you have to add in their attendance in owner because they wouldn't have one. You might need to change their start dates and whatnot in owner so they actually appear on rolls and whatnot, but then you also need to change the enrollment, okay? So keeping that in mind, there's no right or wrong, okay? Because you might start the enrollment on Monday, but they come last Friday, so you still might have this issue. So, you know, just keep on top of it, basically, is what I would say. All right. Let me just check if there's any more here. There are other what do you call it, errors as well. One of them that comes up as well, and I'll just explain it as well, is to do with the sign in and sign out time of the child. It's very similar to the start time, end time must not overlap with other sessions, but it's to do with the sign in and sign out time. It happens with before and after school care sometimes, where services are forgetting to sign out their before school care, and they're signing the after school care. When the parent comes in, they put their signature. They think they're signing out the after school care, but they sign out the before school care because there's no what do you call it? There's no sign out time for that one. So just be on top of that. We also now are going to start showing it under the session reports. Okay. I don't know if we've got any here. We were trialing it. No, there's none here. We were trialing it and we did have like a feature, what do you call it, update on our website. So on our Facebook page, you'll be able to see now sign out time is greater than session of care, okay, with red text, and it'll have the little like greater than symbol, and you'll be able to know, okay, there's something you need to focus on. And essentially it's going to be, if there's more than an hour difference between the sign out time and when the session should have ended, it will come up as a warning here. Okay, so especially more so for USH/OSH services and anyone doing before after school care, that's going to be a nice way to sort of be on top of that as well. Okay, awesome. And that's pretty much it in terms of the errors that I've covered today. At least there might be other ones, and like I said, if there's any errors you're not familiar with, just send us a message and we'll be able to help you. But just hope this is helping you understand the sort of thinking behind it. Ignore the big error, like the, sometimes people get overwhelmed by this error that comes up that looks like this. Let me just go back to it. They see like a big error code like this, right? And they freak out or something. Just remember that all you need to know is the words here. Yeah, 5. Yeah. Awesome. All right, so I'm just getting the nod up that we'll have to wrap this up soon, but there's just 2 more things I kind of want to sort of bring up and then let you guys sort of ask questions, and that's to do with children with 2 carers. Okay, now if you have split parents or a child who has to have 2 different enrollments, the best way to do it in ONA is to create 2 separate children. Okay, so create a child called Jack and create a child called Jack, and then in brackets mum or in brackets M or something like that, right? And what will happen is one will be dad's profile, one will be mum's profile, and you will basically create the days for dad in dad's, like in Jack dad's profile, and the days for mum in mum's profile. They will each have their own enrollment IDs. All right, you create different enrollment IDs for each child, because every time a child is submitted to CCS under a carer, they have to have a different enrollment ID. That also happens if you change carers. Okay, so making sure that each child has their own enrollment ID, and then basically you'll create 2 different accounts for them so they can be on top of their financial accounts as well. Okay, that's one thing I wanted to advise. And one thing with the split carers as well is that there may be a period where we were accidentally submitting mum's enrollment ID instead of dad's. So we might need to go in, withdraw the sessions as you've heard today. That's another case where the child should not have been submitted, but they were. So withdraw all those sessions with the old enrollment ID, update the enrollments and whatnot, and then go in and submit those sessions with the correct enrollment ID. What if 2 different parents look after a different child? What if 2 different parents look after a different child? Do you mean the same child? Sorry, Terry, can you just elaborate on that, because I'm not quite understanding it. 2 different parents look after a different child. Yeah, I think maybe the wording. Do you mean 2 different parents look after the same child? Because usually there's only 1 primary carer, right? There's not usually 2. So the child usually only has 1 enrollment ID. Just elaborate and I'll be able to help you. Each parent supports a different child. So you're saying like a mum and a dad, they have 2 children, let's say a son and a daughter. Mum looks after the son, dad looks after the daughter. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, each one will have their own enrollment ID. That's it. So what will happen in that case is, okay, and one thing to note, when we're talking about carers and whatnot, and we do have some guides on this stuff as well, change primary carer is one of them, and child with 2 primary contacts. Feel free to go through these guides. Make sure, so in Terry's case, we've got 2 children, right? Let's say Colette and we'll say Jack, okay? Colette is actually looked after mum. So I need to, in Colette's one, change it here. So Lisa is the primary carer and Todd is the secondary, okay? Update that family because I need to make sure that Lisa's the primary because she's the one that's claiming the CCS for this particular child. However, in Jack's case, pretend this is Jack, I have Todd as the primary carer, okay? Jack will have his own enrollment ID here with, let's say, dad or mum, whatever the example is. So Jack with dad, okay? So he'll have one enrollment ID, and Colette with mum will have their own enrollment ID. Does that make sense? Awesome. When will the next training regarding this content? Which content, Olivia? We record all this, by the way, so we actually will upload them on YouTube, and you'll be able to scroll through them. In a second, I'll show you guys as well. Just give me, children with incorrect information. Oh, yeah. So then the last thing to remember, guys, is if you've submitted, the child has the wrong information, you need to re-put that in. You need to make sure that you update the room permanent days for the child, okay? Let's say, for example, we've been submitting them, with Saturdays and Sundays, which we shouldn't have, or wrong fees, wrong session of cares, whatever. And we realize after the fact, what do we need to do from a CCS perspective? Update the room current days, okay? That will change everything from the future onwards. Go back to the attendances and check, are there any past attendances which have been affected? If there are past attendances which have been affected, there's a high probability that the CCS has also been applied incorrectly. So what you'll need to do is go to the CCS tab, okay? And then go to the the CCS tab, and then go to session reports and update it as we were talking about before. So the orange update session button, okay? Yeah, Olivia, we will be uploading it. So the trainings that we do are recorded, and they're split up and broken down, and within a week they're uploaded to YouTube. I will show you in a sec, okay? But yeah, basically you will update that session, and what it will do is it will replace the old information, which was obviously incorrect. Repeat for any weeks you need to redo it for, okay? If it's just one child, you can do it from submit session reports or weekly attendance fee. Sorry, take that back, please, guys. We're updating, so we can only do it from this report here, and update it, right? Repeat it for each week, select the child, and then update the session, okay? And that will, fix the CCS component, and again, within 24 hours, that will fix the CCS if it's a positive, and then within the next payment run, if there's CCS needs to be retracted, they will update you on your next payment run, okay? And that's basically how that all works. I think I'm getting a bit pressed for time because I think we've got another meeting coming on. So I think we might have to skip the questions. Does anyone have any quick questions to ask right now? Maybe I have like 2-3 minutes if you guys are quick. And in the meantime, I want to show you something cool. So we've actually been working really hard on our support, and I think you guys already know we have some fantastic support network. But to even give you guys even more sort of help than just our owner help center, and we're going to look at integrating all this together, we actually have come up with a YouTube channel, which hopefully it will load in a second, where we can actually go through our trainings. So this training took about an hour and a bit, right? We can go through this training, and it is split up. So go into Owner on YouTube, Owner Childcare Apps, subscribe to it, okay? We have playlists that you guys can look at, okay? Tutorials and webinars. So the webinars will be the full content, and the tutorial will be broken down. And what's going to happen to this video is one of my team members will go through and break it down into nice, small, digestible segments, okay? The CCS and billing are a bit longer than the Owner Basic stuff, but you can easily go through and you can clearly see, like, for example, how to increase family engagement. Go to this guide, and it's okay. So that might be more webinars. That's 35. But here, sharing online resources with families, 6 minutes. We did like the one last week, which is about an hour and a half, and we broke down each content. So go to this, and it'll be you'll be able to see it. Also, jump on our Facebook page. Sorry, guys, I'm just going to quickly do this, and then I'll have to go apologize. Jump on our so it's not there. Jump on our Facebook page, and we also have an online community now, a group where you can also go into to see all these updates and whatnot. And these trainings will be recorded on Facebook Live once we sort all that out. I think today might have been there, I just didn't see it. Okay, so awesome. Sorry, guys, I do need to jump on because it seems like there's another meeting happening now at 2 o'clock. So I do appreciate you guys for coming on. I really hope this has been valuable and has helped you sort of understand how to sort of, dissect these sort of, these troubleshooting steps, okay, for enrollments or submissions, okay? And then anything you guys need, just get in touch with us, okay? We're always happy to help. Sorry, I have to squish the question time. But yeah, I hope this has been valuable. Thank you so much for jumping on our trainings. Once the recordings are live, we will email you guys as well to let you know. And yeah, we're always happy to help, so reach out. Thank you once again. Have a good day and a fantastic weekend. Signing out from Owner. Bye.